righty, welcome back to another wonderful Lab Wednesday session with our work-based learning team. Today we have something special in store for you guys. You guys have asked us a ton about adulting, all these adulting questions about credit scores and GPAs. So we put our heads together and we came up with a wonderful session called Adulting 101, Calculating Your GPA and Credit Score. For those I don't know, my name is Ms. Tucker and I'm one of our Ed Associates of College and Career Readiness, and I have an awesome team of college and career experts with me. You guys want to introduce yourself?
Sure, my name is
Sure, my
Adenike
name is Miss
Atkins.
Ford.
Go ahead, Miss Ford.
No, I'm sorry. No. Go ahead.
All
Hi,
you.
everybody. I'm Miss Ford. I'm sorry, I did not mean to cut my colleague off. I'm an ed associate as well.
And
Welcome.
good, well, thank you. And good afternoon, everyone. Happy day before Thanksgiving. My name is Adenike Akintillo, and I'm part of the work-based learning team. So yeah, I'm so excited to work with our college readiness partners on this presentation. So thank you both, Ms. Tucker and Ms. Ford.
All right, so let's get started. Let the adulting begin. What's the next slide?
Oh, yeah, so it's me. Thank you.
It's the day before Thanksgiving, guys. So this is our agenda for today. So we're going to be talking about, we're going to first define credit and GPA. So what is your credit? What is your GPA? How are they kind of calculated? And then we're going to talk about what is your credit and GPA, and then we're going to move into how do we calculate those two things, and then we're going to talk about how do you build your academic and economic capital with your credit and GPA, and then lastly we're going to round it out with how to protect your credit and GPA. And if we get any folks on that have any questions, please feel free to drop those questions in our Q&A box, and we'll get to you expeditiously. So this is a quote that I found just to ground some of our thinking before we engage in some of the content. It says, when you become an adult, your GPA is replaced by your credit score. And as we go throughout this presentation, we're going to explain what this, I think, is a philosopher, Gaju. I have to probably do a little more investigative research on him. But what does he mean when he talks about your GPA is replaced by your credit score? How have those two things sort of calculated? Why do they matter to our lives and our educational and adulting journey? I think that's our next one. So first, defining GPA and where do we find it? So for those that don't know, your GPA is an acronym which stands for your grade point average. Your GPA is an overall culmination of all the grades that you've learned throughout your high school courses, okay? So each letter grade that you earn in a class, it counts for a numeric grade point value. So for instance, A's they're going to account for the number 4, B's 3, C's 2, and then D's and below you get 1. Well, F's you get nothing. But then your grades are divided by the total number of classes that you may take, resulting in your GPA. And we'll get into that a little bit more when we talk about the calculations. But just know that your GPA is an average, a mean value of all the grades that you've accumulated throughout your high school classes. And you have GPAs for high school within the current semester. You'll see on your transcript where it says current GPA. That's your GPA for classes that you're taking within one academic year. And then you have your cumulative GPA, which is your GPA for all the classes that you've taken throughout your high school career. Okay. Lastly, you can access your GPA by logging into Infinite Campus or Naviance using the Clever integration and reviewing your academic data there. Okay, so that's just getting us started, getting us warmed up on GPA and where to find it.
Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about defining your credit. So you heard us mention about credit and credit scores in previous presentations, and basically your credit is a 3-digit number that helps lenders determine how likely you are to repay a loan. So the higher your score, the more likely you are, to repay what you borrow. So likewise, your credit score determines if you can borrow a loan, how much you can borrow, and what it's going to cost you. And again, so the higher your credit score, the less that the loan will cost you. And why is this important? Oh, well, actually, where can you find your credit score? Excuse me. So there are 3 credit bureaus that create and track your credit score. And so when you, let's say you apply for a car loan, The place you're applying to may check your score with Equifax. They may check it with Experian. They may check it with TransUnion, or they may check all three. And your credit score is a little bit different based on the credit bureau. So if you get your credit score from TransUnion and then you get it from Equifax, they'll be similar, but they may be a little bit different. You are entitled to a free credit report every 12 months, and we strongly encourage you to check it, especially some of you who are turning 18. The three credit, you can go to each individual's website. You could do Equifax, you could go on Experian's website and request it, or you could go on a TransUnion. But the quickest way is to go on annualcreditreport.com. And if you go on this website, you can request credit reports from all three unions. Now, your credit report will not have your credit score, but it will have anything, any credit that you have out there is going to be listed on your credit report. So let's say, for example, you turn 19 and you decide you want to buy yourself a car. If you pulled up either your Experian, your TransUnion, or your Equifax, you would see that car loan there. Let's say you decided you wanted to buy yourself a car and you already had a Visa credit card. When you pull up your credit report, that Visa credit card and how often you paid it is going to be on there, as well as that car loan. So any credit you had, any loans you've taken, any credit cards, anything like that are on your credit report. And it's really helpful to get it every 12 months, because if someone, let's say, stole your identity, you would know because you check your credit report and you would say, wait a minute, I never applied for a car loan. Why is a car loan on my credit report? And then you can contact authorities and do something about it. But if you're like, hey, I'm 21, I'm 20, and I don't have a credit card, there's no need for me to check my credit score. You might not know that even 2 years ago, somebody took your information and and got a car loan. So you want to check your credit report on a regular basis. Every 12 months, you get it for free, just to make sure you have not been a victim of fraud. Now, why is credit important? So we're gonna again use some adult language, right? Mortgage, the M word, it's a loan that you get to pay for a house. So just like you can get a car loan, when you get a house loan, the term is called mortgage. And let's say it was a few years from now and you decide you want to buy a house for $200,000, which is a nice house in Baltimore. So you go to fill out your mortgage application. The first thing that they're going to do is pull your credit report from all three credit unions, and they're going to generally take your mid credit score. Like I said, your credit score will be a little bit different from either the three credit bureaus, and they're going to take the middle one. So let's say you have been excellent, you are super duper responsible, and your credit score is over 780, and you want to take out a $200,000 loan to buy yourself a house. So average mortgage rate 3.64. Actually a little bit low. It's a little bit cheaper now, but this was from a couple months ago. If that was your rate, you would be paying $913.79 a month. But let's say your credit score wasn't so strong. 600 and 650 is not a bad credit score. It's just obviously not as high as 780. And you took out that same $200,000 loan, you be paying $1,100. So almost a $200 difference. Less than myself and Miss Tucker could be neighbors. We're living in the same house, both $200,000, same, let's say, townhouse, built the same way. If I've got that 600 credit score, I'm paying $200 more than she is to live in the exact same house. So that's why making sure that you are not a victim of fraud, checking your credit report, and making sure that when you open up a credit card or you take out a car loan or anything like that, you pay it on time. Because if you have a lower credit score, you're going to pay for it. And if your credit score is not at a certain point, you can't even get a loan. If you said, I want to apply for a mortgage, and they pulled your credit and you had a 500 credit score, you would be denied. They would say the chances are too high that you're not going to pay this loan back. And so you would be denied. So you have to generally have at least 600 some credit score to even apply for a mortgage. So again, keep that in mind, because you're about to be 18 and you're going to start getting credit card offers. So many credit card offers is ridiculous. So just be very, very responsible when you open up when you open up a credit card, because it impacts your credit score, and that really can impact your budget. So again, like I said, the higher credit score, the lower interest rate. In the previous chart, the person with that 780 credit score paid $190 less than the person with the 600 credit score. And why is that important? Over the course of a year, that's $2,282. Now, again, getting back to those adult terms, remember a mortgage is specifically a loan that you take out to buy a house. They're generally, you can do one for 30 years. There's a 15-year loan, but almost most people take out a 30-year mortgage, meaning they're getting 30 years to pay their house back. So remember, if I got that 600 credit score, Miss Tucker has that 780, I'm paying $2,200 more per month than she is to live essentially in the same house. If you multiply that by 30, that means if she and I bought two townhouses next to each other, we both paid $200,000, our credits didn't change, and we stayed there for 30 years, I would pay $68,000, $479.20 more than Miss Tucker would. Same house, same amount of money because she has a higher credit score than me. And I'm sure you could think of a lot of things to do with $68,000 just like I can. So keep that in mind. Like if you do not have a high credit score, you will pay more. Okay. So the higher credit score, the lower your interest rate, and interest rate is just how much a loan costs you. But again, it's going to cost you less if you have a high credit score. Okay. And I know you want to make up, like, well, how is this credit score calculated? That's obviously the next question. As you can see, there are 5 different components that make up your credit score, and it can range from 300 to 850. If you have a 300 credit score, you basically can't take out a loan of any kind. If you've got an 850 credit score, you can take out a loan pretty much. I mean, you won't have any problems getting a loan. And so, in terms of your credit score, 30% of your score is the amount that's owed. So obviously, if I owe and then an amount owed, it's not just amount owed, it's utilization. And let me explain. So let's say, for example, I have one credit card and it's $1,000. If I owe $1,000 on that credit card, I am using 100% of my available credit, right? So I have no money left. I have $1,000 worth of credit. I'm using it. That's considered bad. Now, if I have one credit card that has $10,000 and I've only got 1,000 on it, that means I'm only using 10% of the credit that I have available, and that's considered good. Because again, if you were gonna loan somebody some money, would you loan somebody money who has, like, all maybe they borrow some money from other people and they borrow the max amount of money? Not necessarily, right? You want to make sure, like, when they're looking at you, they want to make sure that you're not using everything that's given to you. If you got $10,000 worth of credit, they don't want to see that you're using all $10,000. So because that can bring up some red flags. So they look at your credit utilization or the amount you owe. They look at new credit. That's 10% of your credit score. Generally, they don't want not they. Generally, it looks bad when you apply to more than 2 loans per year. And so if you're in loans, can be credit cards, loan can be a house, a mortgage, a car payment. Once you get over that too, it starts to negatively impact your credit. Because again, if I'm applying to 100 different credit cards, why am I doing that? Maybe I hit some sort of financial issue, and so that makes somebody leery about loaning me money. So again, you don't want to apply to 20 different credit cards. 2 is generally considered okay, but when you do more than 2 a year, it negatively impacts your credit score. They look at the length of your credit history. So I mean, unfortunately, even if you're responsible, if I'm 30 and I'm older than that. If I'm 40, let me be real. If I'm 40 and I've got a credit card and I've been responsible for 20 years, and you opened up one at 20 and you're responsible, my credit is going to be higher just because I've had it longer, and so that they can see that I am responsible. I didn't just open it up a month ago. So you really can't do anything about length of credit history. If you're 18, you're 18, or you're 20, you're 20. But the longer you have credit and you're responsible, the higher your credit score. They also look at credit mix. And so they don't necessarily, and when I say they, like, the credit bureaus don't necessarily want to see that. They want to see that you have a credit mix. Maybe you took out a car loan, or you have a mortgage, or you have a credit card. They don't want to see that you have 5 credit cards and that's it. They look at the mix to see, just to make sure that, like, you're not trying to live your life just strictly on credit cards. And so, but the biggest factor, hear me, if you don't remember anything else from this presentation, the biggest factor that impacts your credit score is your payment history. You need to pay your bills on time. Even if you take out, let's say you turn 18 and you put your cell phone in your name, that's going to go on your credit report. And so if you're always paying Verizon late, or you're always paying Sprint late, eventually they put it on your credit report. They might give you a couple days or even a week or two, but if your bill is due December 15th and you don't pay it to January 10th, they're going to put that on your credit report. And that's going to show up that you paid your bills late. And that's going to severely drop your credit report, credit score, especially if there's not a whole lot on it. It's one thing if I've got 4 credit cards and maybe it comes in that I paid my cell phone bill late. But if I'm 18 and I don't have any credit cards and the only thing on my credit report is my actual cell phone bill, and then I pay it late, or I had one bill and it's late, and that's going to drop my credit score tremendously. So keep that in mind, because I know a lot of you, you're turning 18, you might put the cell phone in your name, or you turn 19 and you might decide to get a car. When it's in your name and that payment is late, it negatively impacts your credit score. Okay.
So, Ms. But I think this is a good place to stop and talk about the correlation between like the credit score and the GPA. So, I think kind of what you said is like the higher your credit score, the more you can buy, right? The bigger your assets, right? And in terms of just debt ratio. And also when we think about your GPA, the higher your GPA, the more scholarships that are going to be available to you, the more colleges you're going to be able to get into, the more even if you're not interested in college, if we just think about like our trade associations or workforce development programs, a lot of them look at GPAs as an indicator for some of those entrance exams. Do you want to talk a little bit about that as well?
Sure. And so a lot of the times people think, like I've had students say, like, oh, I'm not applying to college, my GPA isn't important. Yes, it is. If you're applying to the military, they look at your GPA, especially if you're applying to some of the trade programs, they look at your GPA, because as your credit score indicates how likely you are to pay back a loan, your GPA indicates how likely you are to succeed. And so if I've got a 4.0 GPA, it means I've got a strong work ethic. It says something about how I value school. It doesn't necessarily say something about my intelligence. Let me be clear. I am not saying because you have a higher GPA, you're more intelligent, but it definitely says something about my work ethic. And so if I'm applying for a job or I'm applying for a scholarship and they're trying to figure out, is this person really going to, are they going to put in the work? They're going to look at my GPA, because my GPA is a record of how much work I did. Just like if I'm trying to figure out if I'm applying for a loan and they want to figure out, well, is she going to pay it back? My credit report is looking to, do I pay my bills on time? Because that's really essentially what it is. They're going to look at my bills. Do I pay them on time? With your transcript and your grades, they're going to look at the classes you in. Do you work hard and do you succeed? And so people use your transcript to kind of get an idea of where your work ethic is in terms of school. People look at your credit report to get an idea of where your, how you handle your money. And as an adult, you're going to be, if you are a lot of the times your GPA, sorry, a lot of the times people look at your credits, your report, to get an idea of who you are, and they also look at your GPA to get an idea of who you are. And so keep that in mind, because people are going to be making judgments about you. If you apply for a scholarship, they don't know you personally. They're going to look at your transcript to get an idea of the kind of student you are. You apply for a car loan, they don't know you personally. They're going to look at your credit report to get an idea of how you handle your money. And so that's why we really wanted to talk to you about the both things, because as you move into adulthood, your GPA is going to matter, and so is your credit score. And
That's
we're going to talk
awesome.
a little bit about how to build them up in a minute.
No, that's awesome. I love how you compare them. So thank you. So now we're going to talk about GPAs. So new to me is that there are three types of GPAs. There is a weighted GPA, unweighted, and then cumulative. So your weighted GPA is for some schools or school systems where they give a different weight for the difficulty of the class. So for example, if you were taking an AP course, getting an A in that class might be a 5.0 versus getting an A in a general population class might be a 4.0. Unweighted, what it means is that it doesn't really matter if you're an AP course or how difficult your class is, all grades are weighted the same. So an A in an AP class is a 4.0 and an A in a general class would be a 4.0 as well. And as Ms. Tucker talked about at the beginning about the cumulative GPA, that's basically an average of all your grades for a semester or a school year. And that cumulative grade is what your colleges or any of your post-secondary opportunities are going to be looking at. So in terms of calculating your GPA, the first step is to assign each of your grades a number. And you'll see on the left top corner, general formula for almost all of the grades if we're thinking about an unweighted system. And so an A is a 4.0, a B is a 3.0, a C is a 2.0, a D is a 1.0, and a F is a 0. Some school systems use plus or minuses in their alphabetation, and that would also factor in. So kind of know how what your school is using and the numbers that they've assigned for each of those letter values. So once you get that, you're going to tabulate the numbers. So you're going to add all those numbers together, and then you're going to divide that number by the number of classes you're taking. And then you're going to make a note of that number. And then on the next slide, I actually have an example to kind of walk you through. So the example is using the quarterback of the Ravens, yay, who's Lamar Jackson. And so if Lamar was taking a class in this semester, he got a 4.0, and he got an A in math, which would be a 4.0. He got a C in language arts, which would be a 2.0, a B in Spanish, which would be a 3.0, a B in science, which is a 3, C in history, a 2, an A in art history, which would be a 4. And so what Lamar would do is he would add all of those numbers together, which would take him to 16. And if you count math, language arts, Spanish, science, history, and art history, he took 6 classes. So to get his GPA, he's going to take the summation of the credits, or not the credits, but the value associated with those letter grades, and then he's going to divide it by the number of classes. And so based on that, he got a 2.67. Is a 2.67 good? What do you think, Ms. Ford? I've always told that I have to stay above a 3.0, really, especially when we're thinking about colleges. But do you have what's a 2.67 look like for a college submission?
Colleges do like to see a 3.0, but they also take other factors into consideration. So if you have a 2.67, but you took a lot of hard courses, you took those AP courses, you took those honors courses, or maybe you explain in your essay that you were almost working full time, they will definitely take that into consideration. Perhaps you couldn't invest the amount of time you would have liked to because you're working 35 hours a week to help pay some bills at home. And so there are, it could be stronger, it could be weaker, but there are plenty of students who will get into college with that GPA. But just like credit, the higher your credit score, the more opportunities you have to take loans and that sort of thing. The higher your GPA, the more likely you are to get in schools. But Lamar with a 2.67 overall GPA could definitely get into college.
And you'll see how even though he got a 4.0 in math and art history, how those two C's kind of brought the rest of his grades down. So each class matters. Your grades in each class matters because they add up, and they really make a huge factor in your overall cumulative GPA for that semester.
That's an excellent point.
And so just things to know that I thought were interesting is that you should be tracking your grades all the time. You should know, like, after you finish a test or a quiz, kind of how that's going to impact your grade for this semester. Because what you don't want to do is wait till the end of the semester and be like, oh, I got a C, because at that point in time, there's nothing you can do about it. But constantly monitoring your grades for each assignment, your attendance, all of that. That way, throughout a quarter or throughout a semester, you're able to flex to make sure that you're able to like make changes to be able to get the higher the higher number value or letter value for that class. So just a recommendation. Pass fail courses are not factored into your GPA, and if you had to withdraw or had to take an incomplete from a class, that also doesn't factor into your GPA. One of the questions that we got from students in another session was like, do my grades count in middle school? Not so much, but your middle school grades are going to determine for like some high schools you will be able to get into or not be able to get into. But in terms of when we start thinking about colleges and universities, your grades from 9th to 12th grade, that cumulative GPA is a really important factor. A resource that I provided, and the link is at the bottom. If you don't want to have to do all of that math and calculation, you can use this calculator to actually calculate your GPA for you, whether it's for a semester, a school year, or your cumulative GPA.
Okay, so back to credit score. How do you build your credit score? Like you said, 35% of your credit score is based on um, do you pay your bills on time? So the quickest way to build your credit score is to pay your bills on time. The second thing is to pay off debt and keep your balances low. because again, they look at what they call credit utilization. How much of the credit you have are you utilizing? So if you have $1,000 and you're using 1,000, that's like a 0% credit utilization. But again, if you got that credit card, you're at a 10% credit. You're only using 10% of the credit that you have. And so they keep track of that. And that lower the number that is, the less credit you're using, it builds your credit score. You can apply for and open new credits accounts only as needed. And remember, as I said, they will generally speaking 2 per year is okay, but you don't want to apply to like 50 credit cards because you're like, oh, I've never had a credit card. I'm going to apply to 50 to see which one says yes. Every time you apply, it's a little ding to your credit score. And one or two is only a couple of points. But if you were to apply to like 50 credit cards in a year, that can drop your credit score significantly. So don't apply for credit cards unless you need them. And don't close unused credit cards. And remember, that has to do with credit utilization. They look at how much credit you actually have. So let's say you have one credit card that is $1,000 and you have another one that's $1,000. So you've got 2,000. And you think like, oh, I don't use that second credit card that much. I'm just gonna close it. I'm only gonna use one. Well, if you close it, now you only have $1,000 in credit and not two. So if let's say you have $500 on one credit card, if you have $1,000 credit card because you close the second one, you're at 50% utilization. You are using 50% of the credit that you have. But if you had those two credit cards and that's $2,000, right? $1,000 per credit card, and you got $500 on one, now you have a 25% utilization because you're using $500 of credit, but you have $2,000 worth of credit. So don't necessarily close them. They say like even if you're not using one, pull it out and use it like once a year. Buy something small, like something $8, so that it stays relevant. Because if you don't use your credit card in like a couple of years, like eventually they don't really factor it in into your credit score, even if it's open. So keep it open, use it every now and again, just so that like it stays relevant. But don't close your unused credit cards because that does impact your credit utilization. Another trick, you can request to be made an authorized user on account of a relative or somebody that you trust that's been really responsible with their credit. Because if, let's say, I had a credit card and you were my niece, for example, and I made you an authorized user, that now impacts your credit utilization. Because let's go back to my example. You had those two credit cards that are $1,000, so you had $2,000 worth of credit. But if let's say I made you an authorized user on my $8,000 credit card, now you have 1,000 from one credit card, 1,000 from another, 8,000 from me. So now you have $10,000 worth of credit because you could use my credit card too. So that shows up on your credit score. And as long as I'm responsible with my credit card, it looks good. But it doesn't look good if I make you an authorized user. And let's say I have an $8,000 credit card and I'm using up 7,500. That's gonna lower your credit utilization. But if I've got 8,000 and I don't really use that credit card, now you have 10,000. And remember, for those of you who are good at math, I said in my first example, you had $500 on one credit card. Well, if you've got my 8,000 and then your two 1,000, you've got $10,000 worth of credit and you're only using $500, you are at a 5% credit utilization. You're only using 5% of the credit that you have, which is considered really good, and that's going to bump up your score. So keep that in mind too. But if you do request to be made an authorized user, please pick somebody who is responsible, because if they are irresponsible, that can mess up your credit. And just know that people may not necessarily let you do it, because obviously if I made you an authorized credit card user, that means you could actually use my credit card, and vice versa. If you go and do something crazy, that's going to show up on my credit score. So people aren't on my credit report, and people aren't always willing to make you an authorized user, but like a parent or uncle or aunt, somebody you're close to that you know is responsible, if you're trying to build your credit score, you can do that too. And do not make anybody an authorized user. As somebody 18, 19, 20, 21, please don't make your boyfriend or your girlfriend an authorized user, because again, they could take your credit card and run it up, and you made them an authorized user. You can't say like, oh, I didn't spend it. If Miss Tucker, excuse me, is authorized using my credit card and she takes it and goes and takes herself on a $5,000 trip, I cannot call the credit bureaus and say, but I didn't spend that money. I made her an authorized user. And so at the end of the day, if she does something irresponsible, it's on me and it's going to show up on my credit report and it's going to look like I took a $5,000 trip. So, if you do decide to take out a credit card at 18, 19, 20, please Do not make a boyfriend or girlfriend or a cousin. Don't make anybody an authorized user, maybe other than a parent or a grandparent that you trust, because what they do will show up on your credit report. Okay. So, how do you build your GPA? One of the things that you can do for sure is to take you want to take rigorous classes, and then for admissions reps, that's considered honors and AP classes. That is a great way to build your GPA up. It looks good. Some schools, depending on the school you go to, if you take an honors class, it's worth zero point 0.5 more. Instead of being 4, it's worth 4.5. You take an AP class, it's worth 5 points, and it just looks good on your transcript because it says you challenge yourself. Another way that you can build your GPA is to do your homework and to do well in the class. The more A's you have, the more B's, the higher your grades, the more your GPA comes up. You don't want to have, and this happens to a lot of students, especially in ninth grade, they don't necessarily take high school so seriously, and then they don't do well in ninth grade. Then they've got to spend 10th, 11th, and the 12th trying to make up for that bad year. So one thing you want to do is just keep your grades high. And another thing you can do, stay consistent. Again, don't let your GPA don't have to, try not to have a bad semester, because one bad semester, maybe you've got a 3.0 GPA, and then you have like a really bad semester where you're just like, I just don't feel like it, and your GPA tanks to a 1.0. It's going to take you more than a semester to build it. One semester can drop your GPA, but it may take you 3 or 4 semesters to build it back up. So just really try to stay consistent. Do well in all of your classes. Don't just think like, well, hey, I'm going to major in math. I don't care about Shakespeare. I'm never going to be writing. I'm going to be an engineer major. But doing well, not doing well in English will impact your GPA, and vice versa. If you say like, oh, I'm going to be a writer, I'm going to write for a newspaper, I don't care about physics. Well, if you get a D in physics, that's going to impact your GPA. So just do well in all of your classes. Those are great ways to build your GPA.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. So protecting your GPA and protecting your credit, because that's as equally as important. So the first two, I think we all know: go to class regularly and participate in class. And I know in this virtual environment, it could be really hard and challenging sometimes, especially in the virtual environment, to really kind of figure out how to show up and speak up. But those first two are really important in building your credibility and your brand with your teachers and your instructors. By going to class regularly and participating, you're actually learning. There are two ways that you're learning. You're learning basically like kind of through an inactive way where you're just absorbing the information that's being given to you, but also being part of the class discussion really shows that you're mastering the content, and you're also able to ask questions in the moment. Another thing about going to class regularly, like you will be able to hear about opportunities for any extra credit works, any special announcements, and things like that. When you're participating in class, it's going to likely also increase your self-confidence as well as your public speaking skills. So even things that you might not even be thinking about, but just how those two things can also transfer into when you think about your career. Organize yourself. This is like the most important and sometimes the most challenging, in terms of just staying ahead and on top of your coursework, and really kind of making the time and prioritizing your assignments. So creating a study strategy that complements your work schedule and learning style. And if you weren't here for the learning style webinar, you can always go to the CCR playlist and take a look at that session. But really understanding like what kind of learner am I, can really help you to figure out what is my study style, what is my study strategy going to be. One of the things that is actually in the next one that I think is really important is really finding your cadence of when you're going to study. For example, my daughter is like, I tell her every day, you might as well go over everything you learned today, so that way it's repetitive. You're kind of building that knowledge instead of waiting like the night before a test and trying to cram all of that in. Most people see success the more times that they're able to engage with the material that they're studying, and are not rushing that process. So even when you think about organizing yourself, thinking about how do you take notes, what are the best ways to take notes? Should you be recording yourself? Is it something that you want to write down? How are you setting up study time, and how are you setting up time to kind of read through your assignments? So we talked a little bit about the daily, weekly study review. And this is something that you might want to do by yourself or something you might want to do in a study group with some of your friends or classmates. Go to office hours. So your teacher and your instructors, they have time during the week, I think is usually on a Wednesday right now. But you can always check in with them where they're available to like go through any areas of confusion or questions with you. So whether you need to catch up, they could be there for that, or even if you just simply want to be have more challenging work or really get ahead, they can really kind of partner with you to think about how to do that. Avoid surprises is something we talked about in the earlier slide. Don't wait till the end of the semester to figure out kind of where you are with your class in terms of in terms of your grades. This is something you should be monitoring and tracking as you go along. Befriend like some of your classmates that have a really strong work ethic, because what people have seen is that the people you surround yourself also kind of dictate kind of what how you're going to show up. So if you're around people who are showing up for class, they're studying, they're doing their work, they're going to it could be a motivation and encourager for you to be able to kind of do those things as well. We talked about avoiding all-nighters. Sleep is so important when we think about success and performance. So if you're able to like review your work on a daily and weekly basis and avoid doing an all-nighter in terms of getting caught up on homework or studying for a test the next day, and being able to give yourself the rest and sleep that you need to be at your highest performance, that's going to help with your success as well. So make use of a library. So even though we're not at school right now, there are virtual libraries that you could access through your computer or your phone. So it's not just reading the content for your class, but how are you exploring all the other subject matters that are related or correlate with the work that you're learning? So people have seen that the more that you read, the better thinker you are, the better you're able to write, the better you're able to analyze. So really just stretching yourself and going above and beyond what they're asking for in the classroom, and really diving into things that you're interested that also tie into kind of what you're learning. So study smart, creating a study plan, knowing your learning style, working with a study partner or study group, and reviewing your coursework on a daily and weekly basis, really, I think is what falls under study smart. And set a goal for yourself and reward yourself. I mean, I know I respond well when I set a goal. And so maybe the goal for this semester is that I'm gonna finish the semester with a 3.0, and if I do that, I'm gonna treat myself to I don't know. I guess you guys don't buy albums anymore. I guess a soundtrack or something, or a movie or something fun like that, or a new video game. So just think about each semester or each quarter, setting what you want your GPA goal to be, tracking that progress, and figuring out what ways can you reward yourself if you're once you're able to achieve that goal. So protecting your credit score. So the main areas where you can start protecting your credit score, and I think Miss Ford also spoke about it, is really monitoring and checking your credit reports, right, to make sure that you're fully aware of any activity that might be happening. So the first one is your bank accounts. If you have a savings or checking, kind of monitoring for any financial errors or suspicious activities. So that way, if you see a debit or a charge being made that wasn't you, you know that you need to close your account. Your credit. So you can also enroll in a credit monitoring service that will alert you to anytime anything suspicious is happening on any one of your accounts. That's a way to be more vigilant about that. Same thing with an alert, placing a fraud alert on your credit report. It's almost the same thing as the monitoring service. Passwords. Passwords are so important. So making sure that you have really strong passwords, that you're not sharing your information on social media or in other places where people might be able to start to guess or get clues as to that kind of information. And the one that I just learned about that I think is really awesome is freezing your credit. You don't even have to start having credit to just be able to freeze your social security number so that your credit is frozen and nobody can use it, and you don't have to worry about it. And then and you have to do that with all three major credit bureaus, which is Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. The only thing to remember is that you need to keep that password, because in order to thaw out your credit, you're going to need that same information that you froze it with. I think that's all I have, and I'm going to turn it back over to the college readiness team. Thank you so much.